Hi there, this is Jennifer. Welcome to Crafting in Carrollville. Before we start on our DIY projects, I wanted to show you my latest art piece. I did get it all scanned. It's ready to stick on absolutely everything. I also finished that decoupage paper that we talked about in our last video. There it is. It's ready for purchase, and I do have the link in the description box. Here are the materials we're going to be working with in today's video. Here are some additional materials that I'm super excited about. I bought those molds at the bins, and the first thing I want to do is try out this mold making kit. I got this mold making kit on Amazon. It's comparable in price to the actual quick cast resin, so between $20 and $25 I think is what it cost. I've read the instructions, I've watched a couple videos, I decided I'm going to try this. I'm using a shallow Tupperware, and I'm taking those molds out of the packages, and I'm just using a touch of hot glue to tack them down to my Tupperware so that they will stay stationary while they are molding. Good idea, right? These molds are old and vintage. I did Google search them, Google Lens search them. I can't find the exact maker. I feel like they're not copyright. I don't feel like I'm violating any copyright laws. I feel like they're old and vintage, and they are sold as such. So I did find several of them for sale on places like Etsy, Pinterest, eBay, all those places. So I wouldn't do this with, current molds that are for sale. That would be definitely a copyright infringement, but here we are, I'm using these. I feel like you could pick up a ton of things every single day and make molds. So this product is definitely worth having on hand if you're interested in that. So basically it works like the Amazing Casting Resin. You're using 2 equal parts of the solutions. There's A and B, and instead of by measuring them by volume, you're measuring them by weight. That's why I have the digital scale there, just making sure that I have equal amounts of both, and then I'm stirring it for 3 to 5 minutes. Stir it in one direction slowly. I'm actually stirring slower than it looks like I am, but I have sped my process up, of course, for y'all. There is some sort of a vacuum device that will suck the air bubbles out, but I don't think it's necessary. You can see the air bubbles rising after you stop stirring. You can see that they are escaping from their chamber there, so all is well. I actually have to pour another layer on top of this because you want to pour about 1/4 inch above the top of your objects so that your mold will be deep enough and thick enough so that you don't have, obviously holes, because the idea is it needs to hold the resin. So I do stir up some more of this potion and and pour it on top, and it doesn't have any effect on the setup process. Basically, it takes about 7 hours to set up. So in the next frame of videos, it will have been 7 hours later, and that seemed to be the perfect amount of time. And if it is a little tacky, you know what helps? Actually pouring resin into it, because the heat from the resin sort of finishes the curing process of those molds. This is the most difficult part of this project, is cutting these original castings out of their invincible prison there. So I just use an X-Acto blade to do that, but this seriously was the hardest part. And like I said, if they're not perfect, pouring resin in them helps tighten them. It sort of does a burn of those holes, those cavities. So they seem to get better with use. So if you use this product and you're worried about the tackiness that happens after they first have cured, just start using them, and that seems to go away. That's what I read, and that was my own experience. So definitely worth having this product on hand. I'm definitely interested in making some more molds. Like, I think this is a great thing to have. And again, it's one of those things where you're not limited. You can mold just about anything. Just watch a few videos and you'll have it. Like this, this isn't my specialty. There are people that do this, much more effectively and efficiently than you see me doing here. but it worked. Now, in order to pour my molds, I did find that I needed to put them on something that had some contrast because I couldn't see to actually fill the cavity without my bright pink silicone mat under there. So if you struggle with something like that, just remember to put something brightly colored under your almost translucent mold and you'll be able to see it much better. That's what I did. I was super excited about my little cherub there. I was less enthusiastic about the fairies, but I wanted them nonetheless. So, and they turned out, they weren't as great and crisp as the cherub, but again, I think they will be if I use them more because they will harden. The cavities will harden as you use them. So, but they are very close. They're not quite as crisp as the original, but definitely very good still. Now here's our second project. These are cedar tags that came from some landscape edging that we used in our yard a few years ago. They're super rough. I have sanded the surfaces down though so that they're smooth on top. I haven't sanded the edges yet because I wait until I have my graphics on there so that I can just sand them all down at once. These graphics are from Creative Fabrica, but I've printed them out. Actually, I've had them printed at Office Depot because I need them to be laser, so I need toner, not ink, and I don't have a laser printer, so I just sent these over to Office Depot and then picked them up when I went to town at some point. And when you prepare your graphics that way and send them over, they just can do them any old time, you know, and it's a lot quicker than waiting. I'm just painting all my tags white. This is just regular white, whatever kind of paint it is. That I had in my workshop. Just giving them a rough coat. These are going to be super rustic. You're going to see at the end. And you might ask, like, why am I using the specific transfer method that I'm going to use here? I could use water slide paper, I could use vinyl, you know, I could have made stencils. There's a million different ways I could have done this. I chose this method because it's the most rustic method that I could think of, and that's what I'm after. I'm just after a very rustic farmhouse look here. So you'll see I've cut my graphics, I've separated all of them, and I'm putting Mod Podge right on the toner. Most of the time I remember to do that. It's really the toner that you want to be in contact with the Mod Podge because that's what's being transferred, but I didn't remember that in most of mine. I just am so used to putting it right on the substrate that that's what I did. It didn't seem to make a huge difference. What did make a difference is how long you let these sit. The ones that I came in too soon and started rubbing the paper off, those are the ones that took the most lettering off, and I did just come back in with a black paint pen and fix those. But the ones that I let set overnight, I definitely got better results. So if you're going to do this method, let them sit overnight. There was really no reason that I couldn't have done that. I was just in a big fat hurry. So no reason at all that I couldn't have just let them sit overnight. Crafting is a process, you know, sometimes it's to be continued, and sometimes I just forget that and get in a hurry, and, you know, but there's always the option of moving on to something else, you know. Sometimes we have to let paint dry. And believe me, I'm preaching to the choir right here. I'm the choir. So I'm just adding a graphic to each one of those tags. They're all different for the most part. And I'm using a pretty thick coat of Mod Podge because, like I said, you want the Mod Podge to actually touch the toner. Here I am, I'm rubbing my paper off, and that's simply done by getting it nice and wet. And then I keep my fingers wet as I rub. And if you see some of the letters coming off, you're going to see in the end that I come back in with a black paint pen and just touch them up. If they're a little too rustic and, you know, I have a hard time reading what it actually says, then I haven't really accomplished my purpose. So I do come in with a black paint pen and touch those things up if I need to. Most of them I just didn't need to, but like I said, the ones that I didn't let set long enough, I did have to touch up a little bit. So there I am. I'm just using my wet rag there to wet the surface of the paper, and then the pulp of the paper just rubs right off and the ink stays. I don't know how it happens, but my mother used to do this transfer method decades ago when I was just a little girl. My mom was a portrait artist, and I can remember her doing portraits and then being big and brave and decoupaging them to wood. And this was, before we had the luxury of, making copies right in our homes. And, the process was a little different back then, but she did it. My mom was such a trailblazer. I thank her every day. She's in heaven, but still, I want to whisper a little thank you to her, say thanks, Mom, for doing that before me, so I knew it could be done. You see the H there is missing on my hay, y'all, but don't worry, I'll come back with a black paint pen and fix that. And like I said, the ones that I waited to do until the following morning came out much better. I love the way that I finished these off. I finished these off with just a little bead hanger. And before we get to that point, I didn't film myself doing the beads, but in order to whitewash my wood beads that I used, I just shook them around in a Tupperware of white paint that I had thinned down with water. So I'm just telling you that because I don't show you that. So when we get to the next step in this process, I will have already done the beads. But here I am. I'm just taking a double length of twine. I'm taping the ends together so that they'll go through my hole easily and also go through those beads easily. I'm just taping those ends together, doing a little slip knot, then adding 3 painted beads. They don't look painted, but they're just whitewashed. I just, like I said, shake them around in a closed Tupperware, pour them out onto a towel, and just rub them down so that most of the paint comes up. Then I just tie a little knot on top. I debated about whether or not to finish those off with a ribbon, but I think I like them just the way they are. So we're just going to leave them just like that. I love how rustic those are. I like to have just buckets of things like that available at my shows, so that's the bucket they're going to be in. And you'll see at the end how I'm actually going to display them on my table. Super excited about those. Now these are for me. Let me stress that I'm not selling these, so these are super rustic. These are for my obnoxiously coastal themed office. I don't do coastal at my house, but I am doing my office coastal because my mom was a coastal artist, so it's sort of a tribute to her. I have all sorts of her artwork in my office. I'm using this scrap wood. It's a 1x4 to reinforce these binder holders is what they are, but they are cheap. Like I can't possibly use them in their current condition, so I'm just reinforcing them with wood to basically make them look like bookends, and then I can put my binders in there. And you're going to see at the end reveal that I actually cover my binders with drop cloth so that they will look very, at home and in place in my very curated binder holders that I'm making here. This is super rough wood, and I love that for the finished look that we're going to have here because it looks very much like driftwood. I save every little piece of hardware that I take off of things for this reason, that I'm going to use these little screws that I took off something else to screw my binder holder to the wood. So I'm attaching it to the bottom piece first because I want the long piece there to span the entire height of my binder holder. So from the bottom of the wood to the top of the binder. So I want that to be one solid piece. I'm using wood glue and those wood screws to give myself a great sturdy product here because that was my complaint about these to begin with. Remember, they're not sturdy enough to hold anything. So I keep in my binders that I'm going to put in these, I keep all my specialty paper, my waterside paper, my tracing paper, carbon paper, rice paper, all the stuff. So I have it in sleeves, those acetate sleeves that you put paper in. So that's what I've got, and that's what I'm going to use these for. All these materials I bought at the bins, of course. The scrap wood came from Home Depot. And I'm going to make a special point to tell you that because somebody did comment on one of my previous videos that not everybody can afford wood. Well, I'm that person. Like, I don't want to go buy wood either for projects. It's expensive. So I buy it at Home Depot off the 70% off cart, and they have it every day. So here I go. I'm I'm adding the bottom piece to my binder holder now, and I am going to do that the same way, except I'm going to use my brad nailer to nail it to the bottom piece there. So you see how that worked? I just put 4 brad nails in there, and then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm still going to screw it in the front there. I think I screw it in the back too. I want these to be super reinforced and super sturdy because my binders are pretty heavy. They're full of paper, and I want to use these for a long time to come in my office. Actually, I'm super excited about them because I don't like make myself things very often anymore. I got everything done and I'm happy with it, but you know, sometimes I like to add things too. So super excited about these actually because I love the way they turn out. Now I'm doing a second one really quickly. I actually make 3 of these, but in case you missed it the first time, you know, you're listening to me gab, whatever. Like here it is a second time. Same thing. I don't show you the third time, but I do make 3 of these, and you're going to see that at the end. It's always a good idea to hang on to your extra hardware. I think you've seen me do this a lot, drag out my little compartmentalized containers of stuff that I hang on to. I think we all do that as crafters. I think we all have a problem throwing things away. Now you're going to see me come in with all 3 of mine, and I'm going to paint them white. Same white that I used in my little rustic projects, my little tags. Got to remove the price tag from Walmart. I think these were from Walmart originally, but I bought them at the bins, which made them, you know, significantly cheaper because they sell things by the weight and they're flimsy as heck. So anyway, I'm painting these white all over. My grand plan was to spray paint these, but it rained for 3 days this week, which was super great. Like we'd been in a drought, so it was great to have the rain. My flowers are really happy and thriving, but it did like waylay my plans a little bit. I had to paint everything by hand instead of spray painting, so I shouldn't complain about it. In fact, I'm not going to complain about it. It just, you know, kept me in my workshop a little longer. I had to give those probably 3 coats of paint, at least the plastic parts. The wood, you know, it was all primed and ready to paint, but the plastic, I had to paint those a few times to cover them. In the end, I love how this little project turns out. I think it was well worth the time and effort on my part to add a little something special to my office. And I hope that y'all remember that sometimes, just to craft for yourself once in a while, especially if you're a reseller. Craft for yourself, because then when people come to your home and they, you know, say, "Where'd you get that?" "Oh, I made it myself," you know. And I think that that's something to be proud of. And also, like, you know, you're worth it. Like, craft for yourself, make yourself something pretty. I have to remind myself of that as well. It's not, you know, it doesn't come naturally to me to just make myself something, but trying to be nicer to myself. Like, I'm trying my hardest. You'll notice, okay, listen, I'm showing you this mold because I want you to know there's a cheaper alternative. I was going to run for the IOD mold. I have it. I was going to use it, but then I remembered that I had just picked this up from Hobby Lobby for $2.99 and it was 40% off. So whatever that makes it. It makes it less than $2. It was less than $2. And, you know, it might not be, you know, as beautiful as the IOD mold, but in the end you're going to see what we do to it makes it very pretty and very worthy. Like, I love the way this project turned out using these molds. So I'm always wanting to show you a cheaper alternative. I think that crafting doesn't have to break the bank. I think we can all do it affordably. And things like molds are perpetual items that you will use for a very long time. So I think that even if you were to spend the money on the IOD mold and, you know, coastal is your thing, you know, you're going to use it and get your money out of it if you're doing resale. And especially if you're just crafting for pleasure and you're not doing resale, these are a great option. Michael's has molds too, but they didn't go over very well, I guess, because they clearanced them right away, and I haven't seen them restock any since then. So you can see I filled up every cavity with resin, because I don't think I use all of these, but I put them in my big container of stuff that I over poured for. I think I only do no, actually I do show you myself putting shells on all of my binder holders. I'm using wood glue again to attach my molds to my wood there. You could also definitely use clay, and clay would give you, I think, probably a better result, to be honest, because it looks more organic, and also you could have, they are more flexible. You could have, arranged these better than I did here. But for ease of use and getting them done and dry time, I chose resin. So sometimes, that's why you make your choices. I put 3 different shells on each binder cover, except for the last one. I do 5 because I use smaller shells, and we all know that we always work in odd numbers, so it's 3 or it's 5, it's never 4. I love the way these turned out, and you're going to see how it all comes together here as I'm working. But these were one of those things that I knew I wanted to make them. I didn't know until I was doing it what I was actually going to do. Like I said, I was running for that IOD mold. I was going to grab that and make these shells, and then I saw this pink mold sticking out of a Hobby Lobby bag that I had just purchased, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to use that. So sometimes craft projects just evolve that way. They happen sort of, in real time, and this was one of those that was just happening in my brain as I was working. I did spend some time on Pinterest looking for ideas on how I could reinforce my little paper holders there. And there were a lot of ideas, but again, so many ideas on Pinterest don't lead to anything. Like, you can click on them and they don't take you anywhere. So sometimes you just have to, be able to visualize what you want and put it together yourself. I'm showing you this bare wax that is on clearance at my Home Depot. It might be on yours, at yours as well. It's $5 for a can. It's usually almost $18 a can. So if you want to run down to Home Depot, they have brown and white waxes at my Home Depot on clearance. The other wax is the Dixie Belle Best Dang Wax, and I'm just using them together because I want to see if it makes a difference, if they're that different that it's noticeable, and it's really not. So even though the Dixie Belle wax looks like it's richer and a little bit wetter, it still gives the same result. So if you're looking for some wax that's affordable, $5 is pretty affordable, especially for how long these tins last. They last for a very long time. A little bit goes a long way. I probably use mine less sparingly than I should because I have so much product, but I feel like this is a great super budget-friendly way to get some wax at this point. They have the white wax and the brown wax on clearance. The clear wax is still, regular full price. But there you have it. I love the way that my wood is so rough that when I'm adding this wax, it actually is giving it that driftwood look, which is what I was going for. My office is pretty rustic. I should show it to y'all sometime. I don't put any pictures in this video, but you'll laugh because when I say it's obnoxiously coastal, I mean it. Like, it's pretty obnoxious. But people have sent me my mom's artwork through the years and always been good to me that way, so I try to have it on display in my house. I'm using these handles that I bought at Hobby Lobby to add just a decorative touch and also a functional use. Like, you can grab your binder holder by a handle and pull it towards you on your desk. So I think that's a great addition. I also love the way that they look like they are seashells. I'm using my drill just to make those holes. I'm not even going to screw these in because the fit is so tight that I basically have to pound them in anyway, so they don't need any screws. And now I'm going to take some my brown wax and gold rub and buff and basically just mimic that look that's on the hardware so that my shells look just like that. I have all the tools on hand to do that, and I knew when I picked up these handles what I was going to do with them, and also that the look would be super easy to replicate. It just looks like literally like we came in with brown wax and gold rub and buff like we do and created that finish. So I'm just going to create that same finish on these little shells. And I'm going to keep alternating products until it looks like I want it to look. So if I have to come in with more brown wax, if I do that. If I have to come in with more gold rub and buff, I do that. I always use the same brush when I use these products, because if I didn't, all my brushes would be disgusting because it doesn't rinse out really well. It doesn't clean really well. So I just kind of use the same brush over and over. And actually, these products work better with a stiff brush as far as I'm concerned. So it helps when you get a little product that kind of sticks around for a while. And I also like to use gloves when I'm using gold rub and buff, because it's so hard to get off your fingers. Anyway, let's zoom out a little bit so you can see a little better, huh? So I did 3 of those. That's what they look like. They're all 3 a little bit different. Same handle, just different shells, but same finish. I just love the way these turned out. I think they're so beautiful. I have one more thing I want to show you, and that is my waffles all done and turned into note cards. These came directly from the printer. I'm just going to put these in a little wood basket that I made. You're going to see that as we go. I'm just bagging these up, six note cards and 6 envelopes in each bag. And they're going to be available at my very next show. We're nearing the end of my video. Stick around to see how everything turns out. I'd love for you to come back next week and watch next week's video, and I'll see you then. Bye-bye.